My name is James. I'm 55, a regular guy, I guess, not particularly wealthy, not famous, just ordinary. I work a steady job, pay my taxes, and live in a small town where everyone knows each other. For the past 30 years, I've been married to Emily. Emily, with her bright smile and infectious laugh, was the woman I thought I'd spend the rest of my life with. But lately, things have changed. Emily has been distant. It's like a switch was flipped somewhere along the way, and now I find myself wondering what happened to the woman I used to know. She's been quiet at dinner, her eyes never quite meeting mine. She spends hours on her phone, hiding her screen whenever I get close, her laughter echoing through the house, a laughter that's no longer shared with me. At first, I dismissed it. I thought it was work stress. Her job has been tough lately, and I didn't want to pry. But then, I started noticing the little things. Like how she's started going out more, dressing up even when she says she's just running errands. Or how she always seems to have new, expensive clothes I never saw her buy. Maybe I've been too complacent, I thought. Maybe it's just the natural drift of a long marriage. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. And then, last Tuesday, I accidentally stumbled upon something that left me breathless. That day, I was looking for my keys, rummaging through the drawers in the kitchen, when I found her phone buzzing in the drawer. The screen lit up with a name I didn't recognize, Ben. I wasn't sure what made me do it, but I picked up the phone and saw a text message, "I can't wait to see you again. Yesterday was amazing." I felt like someone had punched me in the gut. Who was this, Ben? What was amazing? My hands were shaking. I put the phone back exactly where I found it and walked away, but I couldn't let it go. My mind kept spinning, trying to piece things together. Was Emily having an affair? I decided I needed to know. I needed to find out the truth, no matter how much it hurt. After finding that message from Ben, I couldn't sleep. My mind was racing, filled with questions that had no answers. I felt like I was suffocating in my own house, the walls closing in around me. I knew I had to do something. I couldn't just wait for Emily to tell me, if she ever planned to at all. I needed proof. I needed to know for sure. That's when I decided to take a step I never thought I would. I went online, and after a few hours of research, I bought a set of small, discreet cameras. The kind people use for home security. I felt sick doing it, like I was crossing some line, but what choice did I have? I had to know. A few days later, they arrived. Emily was at work, so I took the opportunity to set them up around the house. I placed one in the living room, another in the kitchen, and one in our bedroom. I felt like a villain in my own story, sneaking around my own home, but I needed to know what was going on when I wasn't around. That night, Emily came home late. She looked tired, but there was a glow about her, a small smile that seemed wrong. She kissed me on the cheek, the way you'd kiss a friend, and went straight to the shower. I couldn't help but notice the lingering scent of cologne, not hers, and definitely not mine. I checked the cameras every night for a week, feeling more paranoid with each passing day. But nothing. Emily moved through the house like a ghost, quiet and distant, but there was no sign of Ben, no phone calls, nothing. I almost convinced myself I was overreacting. That maybe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe Ben was a colleague or an old friend, until the following Wednesday. That day, she left the house in the middle of the afternoon, dressed far too nicely for the grocery store run she claimed she was doing. I watched her leave on the camera, and then, just out of sheer anxiety, decided to check the live feed from the bedroom camera. My heart stopped. Emily's phone, forgotten on the nightstand, buzzed to life. A message from Ben, "Meet you at the usual place. Can't wait." My hand shook as I watched, waiting for what felt like hours. And then, she came back into the room, grabbed her phone, and stared at the screen with a smile I hadn't seen in years. A smile that cut me to my core. I felt like my whole world was spinning. I wanted to confront her right then and there, but something held me back. I needed more proof. Something definitive. So, I decided to keep watching, and waiting. It was late afternoon, and I had just gotten home from a long day at work. I switched on the feed from the cameras, like I'd been doing every day for the past week, my heart thudding in my chest. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for anymore. Maybe a hint, a clue, something to confirm what I was too afraid to confront. Emily had told me she was going to the gym. I watched as she left the house, gym bag slung over her shoulder, wearing her usual workout clothes. But then, as I kept the feed running, something caught my eye. Emily didn't drive in the direction of the gym. She took a turn toward the highway, and I felt a jolt of panic in my stomach. I quickly switched to the camera feed in the living room. A few minutes later, the front door opened. I felt my breath catch in my throat. A man walked in, a young guy, maybe in his early 30s, dressed in an expensive suit, his hair slicked back. I watched, frozen, as he looked around, a confident smile spreading across his face. He pulled out his phone and sent a text message. Moments later, Emily's phone, which she had left behind on the kitchen counter, buzzed. I zoomed in on the screen, and there it was, "I'm inside. Can't wait to see you." I felt a chill run down my spine. This was it. Proof. But I still needed more. The man didn't waste any time. He walked straight to the bedroom, our bedroom. I felt my hands clench into fists as I watched him make himself comfortable on our bed. He opened a drawer on Emily's side of the nightstand and pulled out a small, wrapped package. Curiosity overtook me. What was that? He tore off the wrapping, revealing a pair of expensive cufflinks. A card fell out with them. He opened it, and I zoomed in on the camera to read the words, "F for my favorite man. Can't wait for tomorrow. E." I felt like I had been punched in the gut. My Emily, my wife, had bought him these gifts. Expensive gifts. For what? His birthday? Their anniversary? I didn't know, and at that moment, I wasn't sure I wanted to. I watched in silence as he slipped the cufflinks into his pocket and lay back on the bed, hands behind his head, a look of satisfaction on his face. He was relaxed, like he had every right to be there, in my house, in my bed. I felt rage boiling up inside me. I wanted to storm in, drag him out of my house by his fancy shirt collar, and demand to know who he thought he was. But something stopped me. I needed to see this through. I needed to know how far this had gone. The camera in the bedroom picked up the faint sound of a car pulling into the driveway. Emily was back. My heart pounded as I watched her come in through the front door, her face lighting up the moment she saw him. She dropped her gym bag to the floor, her eyes sparkling. She looked happy. Happier than I'd seen her in years. She moved quickly toward him, and he got up to meet her halfway. They embraced, and then she kissed him. A deep, passionate kiss that left no room for doubt. My wife was in love with this man. He pulled back just slightly and whispered, "Did you miss me?" She giggled, a sound that felt like knives in my ears. "Every second," she replied. "But we need to be careful. James will be home soon." The room spun. I clutched the edge of the desk to steady myself. It wasn't just sex, it was so much more. She was planning around me, hiding him in our lives. I sat there, my world crumbling around me. But one thought cut through the fog of my mind: I needed to find out who this man was, and I needed to do it now. Because this was no longer just about an affair. Something else was going on, something much darker. I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them together, Emily's smile, the way she kissed him, the way she laughed. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I hadn't slept at all. My mind was in overdrive, playing every possible scenario of what was happening. I needed to talk to someone before I went insane. I called my old friend Mike. We'd been through thick and thin together since college, roommates, bar fights, breakups. The guy had always been my rock. If anyone could help me figure out what to do, it was him. "Hey, man," I said when he picked up. I tried to keep my voice steady, but I could hear the tremor in it. "James? You sound off. What's going on?" Mike's tone was full of concern, and it was exactly what I needed. "I think Emily's cheating," I blurted out. "I caught her on camera with some guy. They were kissing, and there were gifts, and—" "I don't know, Mike, I think I'm losing my mind." There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then Mike let out a long sigh. "Jesus, James. I'm sorry. That's rough, man. But are you sure? You've got to be sure before you do anything drastic." "I'm sure," I replied, my voice a little stronger now. "I've seen enough to know something is going on. I don't know what to do. Do I confront her? Do I just leave? What the hell do I do, Mike?" Mike was quiet for a moment, thinking. "Listen, James, this isn't something you can just walk away from without knowing all the facts. You need to be smart about this. If Emily's cheating, she's hiding it for a reason. You need to find out what that reason is. Get all the information you can before you make a move." "How do I do that?" I asked, feeling lost. "I've already seen her with him. What else is there to find?" "There's always more, James. You said she left the house in a hurry. Maybe she's been going somewhere specific. Follow her. Track her movements. If she's cheating, she's got patterns, routines. You need to know them." The idea seemed crazy at first, following my own wife like some sort of private investigator, but the more I thought about it, the more sense it made. I needed to know what she was up to, where she was going, who she was seeing. I needed to see it with my own eyes. "Okay," I said, finally. "I'll do it. I'll follow her. But what if she catches me? What if she finds out?" "Then you confront her. But only when you're ready, James. Don't jump the gun. Find out everything first. You deserve to know the truth." We talked a little longer, Mike reminding me to stay calm, to keep my head on straight. After we hung up, I felt a strange mix of fear and determination. I wasn't ready to give up on Emily, not without understanding why. Why had she done this to us? To me? So, I decided to take Mike's advice. The next day, I waited until Emily said she was going out again. I grabbed my keys and slipped out the back door, making sure to keep my distance as I followed her in my car. I felt like a fool, like some character out of a bad movie. But I had to do it. I trailed her for miles, watching as she drove into the city. She stopped at a hotel, one of those fancy ones downtown. My heart sank as I watched her get out and walk inside with a confident stride. I parked a block away and walked over, careful not to be seen. I entered the lobby just in time to see her stepping into the elevator. I caught a glimpse of her reflection in the mirror. She was smiling. That same smile I'd seen on the cameras. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. I looked up at the board displaying the floors. She had pressed for the penthouse. My blood ran cold. Emily was meeting someone in the penthouse suite of a hotel. What the hell was going on? I waited for what felt like hours, watching the elevator numbers light up, waiting for her to come back down. And then, finally, I saw her again. But she wasn't alone. The man I had seen in my house, Ben, was with her. They were laughing, holding hands like a couple on their honeymoon. I felt like I was going to be sick. Mike was right, I needed to dig deeper. There was so much more to uncover, so many secrets still hidden. And I was going to find them all. When I got home that night, I felt like I was moving in slow motion. My mind was buzzing, replaying every moment from the hotel over and over. Emily, with that carefree smile, laughing with a man half her age. Holding his hand like she used to hold mine. I needed a distraction, anything to get my mind off the scene that kept haunting me. So, I wandered into the attic. It was cluttered, filled with boxes we hadn't touched in years, old memories, wedding photos, and knickknacks from when the kids were young. I found an old photo album and sat down on the dusty floor, flipping through the pages. There were pictures of our honeymoon, Emily's eyes full of excitement as we stood on a beach, both of us laughing at some forgotten joke. There were shots of our first apartment, cramped but cozy, filled with hammer-down furniture we were too proud to admit we couldn't afford new. I kept turning the pages, my fingers brushing over pictures of our kids as babies, first steps, birthday parties, and family holidays. I saw the Christmases we spent at her parents' place, the barbecues in our backyard, and our last vacation to the mountains. There was a time when she looked at me with love in her eyes, and I could feel it in every touch, every laugh. I felt a tightness in my chest. What happened to us? When did we lose that? As I continued through the album, I stumbled upon a picture I hadn't seen in years. Emily was sitting on a park bench, her hair blowing in the wind, a soft smile on her face. She was looking off to the side, at something, or someone, just out of frame. I felt a strange pang of jealousy. Was she looking at him? Was he always there, lurking on the edges of our life? I flipped the picture over. There was a date scribbled in Emily's handwriting, April 2004. I tried to remember what was happening in our lives back then. It was around the time we were struggling, dealing with the stress of losing my job, the mortgage payments piling up. It was a tough year for both of us. I had always assumed it was our problems that had caused Emily to grow distant. But now I wondered if it was something else. Someone else. I dug deeper into the boxes, looking for more clues. That's when I found the letters. Old, yellowed envelopes tucked away in a box labeled memories. Most were harmless, letters from her parents, cards from old friends. But then I found a stack of letters tied together with a red ribbon. I opened the first one, my hands trembling. Emily, my love, it began. I can't stop thinking about you. Every day apart feels like an eternity. I miss your laugh, your smile, the way your eyes light up when you talk about your dreams. I can't wait to see you again. Always yours, B. I knew instantly who it was. Ben. The name from the text. The man I'd seen with her. But these letters were old, dated back years, before Ben even came into our lives, at least, before I thought he did. Had he been a part of our story all along? I kept reading, my heart pounding with every word. The letters continued, detailing secret meetings, stolen moments, a love that had been carefully hidden away from the world. My head was spinning. How long had this been going on? How much of our life together had been a lie? And then I found the last letter, dated just a few months ago. Emily, I don't know how much longer I can wait. I need you. We need to be together. You said you would leave him, but you haven't. You promised. If you don't do it soon, I will. I'm tired of waiting. A cold chill ran down my spine. Ben wasn't just some fling. He was someone who had been in the background for years, waiting for his chance. And now, he was tired of waiting. I closed the letters and sat back, my heart heavy with a mix of anger, betrayal, and disbelief. I had been blind for so long. I had missed all the signs. I had let this man creep into my marriage, my life, without even knowing it. But I knew now. I knew everything. And I knew I couldn't keep quiet any longer. I had to confront her. I had to get the truth from her, no matter how much it hurt. After reading those letters, I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, looking down at a life I no longer recognized. I wanted answers, but I knew Emily wasn't going to just hand them over. I needed more. There had to be more. I decided to search deeper, to find out just how far back this went, how many secrets she'd kept from me. The next morning, while Emily was at work, I went back to the attic, determined to dig through every box, every drawer, every corner of our past. I knew I had to be quick. I rummaged through her old journals, flipping through the pages like a madman. Most of it was the everyday stuff, thoughts about the kids, complaints about work. But then, I found an entry dated several years ago, right around the time those letters started. April 15th, met B again today. I know it's wrong. I know I shouldn't feel this way. But when I'm with him, it's like I'm alive again. Like I've been missing something all these years. He understands me in a way James never could. I stared at the words, disbelief coursing through me. She wrote that in our home, in our bed, while I lay beside her, clueless and trusting. She had been writing about him, thinking about him, loving him, all while pretending everything was fine. I turned the page, my heart racing. Another entry. May 2nd, I told B I can't keep doing this. But he doesn't accept it. He says he'll wait, that he understands. I feel trapped. I don't want to hurt James, but I can't give up B either. I love them both, but maybe that's just my excuse. She felt trapped? I was the one who had been trapped, believing in a life that wasn't even real. I felt my hands trembling, rage boiling just beneath my skin. I kept reading, each page a new revelation, each word cutting deeper. One entry caught my eye, a single, short note that seemed out of place among the longer, more reflective ones. June 18th, James can never know. If he finds out, everything falls apart. I stared at the words, a chill running down my spine. What did she mean by that? What else was there to find? I put the journal down and continued searching. In an old file box, tucked away beneath tax documents and legal papers, I found a stack of records. Most were bills, old bank statements, things we'd forgotten to shred. But there was one folder marked personal in Emily's handwriting. I opened it, my breath catching in my throat. Inside were copies of old emails, some from years ago. One stood out, an email from a lawyer. I read it quickly, my eyes scanning over the words. Dear Mrs. Adams, following up on your inquiry, we would like to clarify that proceeding with a divorce while protecting assets will require careful planning, as discussed. Should you decide to move forward, we are prepared to take the necessary steps. Please let us know how you wish to proceed. My hands shook as I put the paper down. Emily had consulted a divorce lawyer. She had been planning to leave me, for how long? Was it recent, or had she been plotting this for years? And why hadn't she gone through with it? I kept digging, finding more emails, messages to and from Ben, plans to meet in secret, and even notes about finances, about moving money around without me noticing. They talked about investments, assets, things I didn't even know we had. And then, at the bottom of the pile, I found something I didn't expect. A letter, unsigned, typed on plain paper. It was short and to the point. Emily, I know what you're doing. I know everything. You're making a big mistake. If you don't stop, I'll make sure James finds out everything. You have until the end of the month. My mind was racing. Who had sent this? A threat? A warning? Did Emily know someone was onto her, that I might find out? Suddenly, everything clicked. Emily hadn't just been having an affair. She had been playing a dangerous game, trying to juggle her life with Ben while hiding everything from me. And someone else knew. Someone who had been watching her, just like I was. I realized then that I wasn't the first to suspect. there had been secrets within secrets, layers of lies that I hadn't even begun to uncover. And if there was someone else out there who knew, maybe they could help me find the truth. I needed to find out who sent that letter, who knew what Emily was up to. I had to confront her, but I needed more ammunition. I needed to know how deep this went, how many others were involved. I had a new mission now, and I wasn't going to stop until I had every answer. Every single one. I couldn't stop thinking about the letter. Who had sent it? Was there someone else watching Emily, someone who knew more than I did? The more I thought about it, the more I realized I was in way over my head. There were too many questions, too many pieces of the puzzle still missing. I decided to search Emily's things more thoroughly. I knew it was risky, but I couldn't stop now. I had to know everything. I started with her desk in the study. It was where she spent hours doing work, or so she claimed. I rifled through her drawers, pushing aside pens, notebooks, and folders. Then, under a pile of old receipts, I found a small leather-bound journal. It looked newer than the others I had found in the attic, the pages still crisp. I opened it slowly, flipping through until I found a page with writing. September 14th, meeting B tonight at the usual place. I feel like we're getting careless, but he says it's worth the risk. I just wish I could tell James the truth, but I know it would destroy him. My blood ran cold. How many times had she met him while I was clueless, thinking she was out with friends or staying late at work? I flipped through more pages. Most of the entries were short, coded almost, as if she was worried someone might find them. I found one that seemed different, just a single line. October 5th, the package is in the safe. I'll wait for your signal. What package? What signal? I knew she wasn't talking about our safe in the basement, that one only held old documents and sentimental things. I needed to find out where this other safe was. I continued searching through her desk. Underneath a stack of envelopes, I found a small, locked box. I grabbed a letter opener and pried it open, feeling a jolt of adrenaline as the lock popped. Inside was a mess of papers, but one stood out immediately, a slip of paper with a series of numbers scribbled on it. A combination. I tore through the house, looking for any place where she might have hidden a safe. It wasn't in our bedroom, and it wasn't in the closet or any of the obvious places. I was getting frustrated, my mind spinning with all the possibilities. And then I remembered the basement. There was an old cabinet down there that Emily rarely touched. I ran down the stairs, feeling the cold, damp air hit my face. I opened the cabinet door, and there it was, a small, steel safe, hidden in the back. I carefully entered the numbers on the slip of paper and heard the satisfying click as the door unlocked. My heart was pounding in my chest as I pulled it open. Inside, I found a small stack of documents and a few USB drives. I grabbed everything and ran back upstairs, my hands trembling. I needed to see what was on those drives. I plugged the first one into my computer, waiting as the screen flickered to life. There were files, dozens of them, with names I didn't recognize. I clicked on one at random, my breath catching as a video started to play. It was Emily and Ben in a hotel room. I could barely breathe as I watched them laughing, drinking champagne, and then moving closer together. I couldn't watch any longer. I closed the video, feeling my stomach churn. I clicked on another file, this time a document. It was a list of names, dates, and amounts, payments, it seemed, to various people. I scanned down the list, noticing a few names I recognized. People Emily had mentioned in passing. A colleague. A neighbor. Even a friend of mine. What was this? Some kind of ledger? Was she paying people off? Or was someone paying her? I felt a wave of nausea. I opened the last file, a spreadsheet titled Final Plan. My eyes widened as I read the contents. It detailed every aspect of Emily's life with Ben, their finances, their plans to move to another country, the steps they needed to take to ensure I was left with nothing. And then, at the bottom, a chilling line, execute by December 1st. My heart stopped. That was only a few weeks away. I sat back, feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. Emily wasn't just cheating. She was planning to disappear, with Ben, and take everything. She was preparing to leave me with nothing. The house, the savings, everything we'd built together, gone. And then I saw it. A note at the very end, highlighted, James suspects. Handle accordingly. I froze. She knew. She knew I was getting close. She had plans to deal with me if I got in the way. My heart raced as I realized just how deep this went, how far she was willing to go to hide her secrets. I knew I needed to be careful, more careful than ever. Emily wasn't just hiding an affair. She was planning something much bigger. Something that could destroy me. And I wasn't about to let that happen. I couldn't wait any longer. Every instinct in me was screaming to confront her, to rip away the lies she had carefully woven around our lives. I knew Emily would be home soon, and I was ready. I waited in the living room, the documents spread out on the coffee table, the USB drives piled beside them. The evidence was clear, there was no way she could talk her way out of this. Minutes felt like hours as I sat there, my heart racing, my palms sweating. I heard the car pull into the driveway, the engine shutting off. Emily's footsteps echoed on the porch, and then the sound of the key in the lock. The door creaked open, and she stepped inside. She stopped dead in her tracks when she saw me sitting there, the papers and USB drives laid out before me like a damning display. Her eyes flickered with a mix of shock and something else, fear. "James, what's all this?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly, trying to mask the panic. "Sit down, Emily," I said, my voice flat, emotionless. "We need to talk." She hesitated but then moved to the chair across from me, her eyes never leaving mine. "What's going on?" she asked, attempting a calm demeanor that was already cracking at the edges. "What's going on?" I repeated, incredulous. "I think you know exactly what's going on. Why don't you start by telling me who Ben is?" Her face went pale. For a moment, she looked like she might deny it, but then she seemed to realize there was no point. "James." Save it," I cut her off, my anger bubbling to the surface. "I've seen the videos, Emily. I've read the emails, the letters. I know everything." She stared at me, her mouth opening and closing, but no words came out. The room was thick with tension, every second feeling like a ticking bomb. Finally, she whispered, "I'm sorry, James. I didn't mean for it to get this far." I slammed my hand on the table, rattling the documents. "This far? This far, Emily? You've been planning to leave me, to take everything we've built, and run off with some guy. How long, Emily? How long has this been going on?" Tears welled up in her eyes, but I felt no sympathy. She looked down, her voice barely audible. "Years. It's been years." I felt like I'd been hit with a sledgehammer. "Years?" I repeated, my voice rising. "You've been lying to me for years, and you just, what? Thought I'd never find out?" Emily took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. "I didn't want to hurt you, James. I didn't know how to end it. I wanted to tell you, but every time I tried, I just couldn't." "Couldn't?" I scoffed. "You've had years to tell me, and instead, you kept sneaking around, planning to destroy everything we have." She stood up suddenly, her chair scraping against the floor. "You don't understand, James. I was unhappy. I felt trapped. Ben, he made me feel alive again. He gave me something I was missing with you." I felt a surge of fury. "So that's it? I wasn't enough for you, So you decided to ruin my life? No, she shouted back, her tears flowing freely now. I loved you, James. I still do. But I needed more. I needed something else. I was about to respond when I heard a noise from the hallway. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. I turned just in time to see a shadow moving near the window. I froze. Who's there? Before Emily could answer, I saw him, Ben, sneaking out from the hallway, shirt half-buttoned, panic on his face. He must have been waiting, hiding, hoping I wouldn't notice. Ben! I shouted, rage boiling over. You son of a bitch! He tried to make a run for it, heading toward the back door, but I lunged at him, grabbing him by the collar and slamming him against the wall. You think you can just sneak in here? Into my home? Emily screamed, James, stop! Don't hurt him! But I didn't care anymore. You've been screwing my wife, planning to steal everything from me. I roared. Why? What the hell do you want? Ben struggled against my grip, trying to push me away. It's not like that, man, he spat. It's not just about the money. Oh really? I said, tightening my hold. Then tell me what it's about. Before he could answer, there was a loud crash. I turned to see Emily, frantic, grabbing a lamp off the table and swinging it toward us. I barely dodged in time, the lamp shattering against the wall behind me. Emily, what the hell? I shouted. She was hysterical now, tears streaming down her face. Just let him go, James. Please, just let him go. But I was done listening. I shoved Ben toward the door. Get out! I yelled. Get the hell out of my house! Ben didn't wait to be told twice. He stumbled toward the door, flinging it open and running into the night. I turned back to Emily, my chest heaving, my head spinning. Is this what you wanted? I shouted. Is this what you were planning? She sank to her knees, sobbing. I don't know, James. I don't know anymore. I stood there, my heart pounding, my life shattered around me. I didn't know what would happen next, but I knew one thing, everything had changed, and there was no going back. The house felt eerily quiet after Ben had fled. I could still hear the sound of his footsteps pounding down the street, and Emily's sobs filled the air like a haunting echo. I stood there, staring at her, feeling a mix of rage, disbelief, and confusion. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this than I had uncovered, that something bigger was at play. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. Emily, I said, my voice tense but controlled. I need you to tell me everything. Now. No more lies. She wiped her eyes, her face pale and desperate. James. I swear, I didn't want this to happen like this. I was going to tell you. I thought I had more time. Time for what? I snapped. To run away with Ben? To leave me with nothing? Her eyes widened, and she shook her head. No, it wasn't like that. Ben, he promised me that we could start over, that it would be better, but then he started talking about money, about how we needed to make sure we were set. He convinced me to move some of our savings, just in case. I didn't know. You didn't know what? I demanded, stepping closer. What did you let him do, Emily? She took a shuddering breath. He said he could help us, that he had connections. I didn't ask questions. I just wanted to feel alive again, to escape, but then things started getting strange. Gifts showed up that I hadn't bought. Tickets to events I didn't remember planning, and then the robbery. My mind flashed back to the robbery. A month ago, I had come home to find the front door kicked in, things scattered everywhere. The police said it looked like a break-in, but nothing valuable had been taken, at least, nothing we could easily see. I'd been baffled by it, but now, a cold realization washed over me. Ben was behind it, wasn't he? I whispered. He robbed us. Emily's face crumpled, and she nodded slowly. Yes, he said he needed some cash to help us get away, to make a clean break. I told him I didn't want any part of it, but he just laughed. He told me it was too late, that I was in too deep. I felt a cold rage bubbling up again. So he took our money, our savings, and you let him? She shook her head frantically. No, James, I swear, I didn't know he was going to take everything. I thought it was just a loan, something small. I never wanted to hurt you. I never wanted to hurt anyone. I turned away, trying to process it all. Ben had used her, manipulated her, and now he was gone, with everything we'd built over the years. And Emily. Emily had been his accomplice, knowingly or not. I don't know if I can ever forgive you for this, Emily, I muttered, my voice breaking. I don't know if I even want to try. She collapsed into sobs, and I felt a strange numbness settle over me. I needed to think, to clear my head. I walked out the front door, ignoring her cries behind me, and headed to the garage where I kept some of my old things, things Emily never bothered to look at. As I stood there, surrounded by dusty boxes and old memories, I spotted an old chest I hadn't opened in years. On a whim, I opened it, and found a small, crumpled envelope at the bottom. It was from a security deposit box I had almost forgotten about, a box I used to keep a bit of cash for emergencies. My heart raced as I remembered it. The box was at a bank in the next town over. I grabbed my keys and drove straight there, the thoughts swirling in my head like a storm. I had no idea if there was anything left in it, but I had to check. When I arrived at the bank, I asked to access the deposit box. The clerk led me to a small room and brought the box to me. My hands trembled as I opened it, my breath catching in my throat. Inside was a thick bundle of cash, far more than I remembered putting in there. And on top, a note in Emily's handwriting, in case you need it. I'm sorry. I sat there, stunned. Emily had hidden some of the money away, perhaps as a backup, perhaps as a way out for herself, or for me. My mind was reeling with what this meant. She wasn't as complicit as I'd thought. She had at least tried to leave something for me. I drove home in silence, my mind a whirl of emotions. When I walked back through the front door, Emily was sitting on the floor, her face streaked with tears, but she looked up when she saw me, hope flickering in her eyes. I found the money, I said, my voice heavy. She nodded, still crying. I didn't know what else to do, James. I was scared. I'm so sorry. For the first time, I saw her not as the woman who betrayed me, but as someone who had been just as lost, just as confused. She had made terrible choices, but maybe, just maybe, there was a way to salvage something from this wreckage. I don't know where we go from here, Emily, I said quietly, but I'm willing to try to figure it out, for now. She nodded, a small, broken smile forming on her lips. That's all I can ask for. The days that followed were a blur. Emily and I barely spoke. We moved around each other like ghosts, lost in the remnants of a life that had once been ours. I didn't know if we were rebuilding or just sifting through the ashes. The trust between us was shattered, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was sharing my home with a stranger. But there were practical matters to deal with. The money in the security deposit box was enough to cover the essentials, but the rest was gone, taken by Ben. I reported the theft to the police, but I knew it was a long shot. Ben had planned this carefully, he was gone, and the trail was cold. Still, I gave them everything I had, the documents, the files, the recordings. It felt like my last chance to make sense of what had happened. Emily tried to make amends. She cancelled the credit cards she'd taken out with Ben, started selling off things she had bought with his influence, the clothes, the jewelry. She even suggested selling the house, starting over somewhere new. But I wasn't sure I could ever forget what happened here. I needed time, space, something to clear my head. One evening, my daughter, Lisa, called. I hadn't told her much, just that things were difficult between her mother and me. She must have sensed something in my voice, though, because she came over the next day, her face filled with concern. "What's going on, Dad?" she asked softly. "You don't sound like yourself." I sat down at the kitchen table, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on me. I couldn't hide it from her any longer. I told her everything, the affair, the lies, the plan to run away with Ben. She listened, her face growing more and more serious, a mix of anger and pain flickering in her eyes. "I had no idea, Dad." "I'm so sorry," she said when I finished. "But you don't have to go through this alone. We're here for you, me, your friends, everyone. We'll help you figure it out." Her words were like a lifeline. I realized then that I didn't have to face this alone. I had people who cared, people who would stand by me, no matter how messy things got. And for the first time in weeks, I felt a small flicker of hope. In the days that followed, my friends rallied around me. Mike showed up with a six-pack and a promise to stay as long as I needed him. My sister called from across the country, ready to fly in at a moment's notice. Even my neighbors, people I'd barely spoken to, offered their support. It reminded me that life wasn't just about the person who had hurt me, it was about everyone else who had always been there, even when I hadn't noticed. Emily and I had long, painful conversations. We decided to go to therapy, not to save the marriage but to see if there was anything left worth salvaging. The sessions were tough. We faced uncomfortable truths, dug into our past, our regrets, our mistakes. We didn't come out of it whole, but we did come out with a better understanding of who we were, and who we weren't. After months of soul-searching, we decided to separate, at least for a while. Emily moved out, finding a small apartment nearby. I stayed in the house, trying to make it my own again, one piece at a time. The distance helped. It gave us both space to breathe, to think, to figure out what we wanted. I found solace in my children, in the little things, cooking breakfast with Lisa on Sunday mornings, taking walks with my son, Matt, talking about everything but the past. Slowly, life began to feel normal again, or at least something close to it. There were still days when I woke up with a heavy heart, days when the memories of what Emily had done seemed too much to bear. But those days grew fewer and farther between. I realized that forgiveness didn't have to be for Emily, it could be for me. I needed to let go of the anger, the betrayal, not for her sake, but for mine. And so, I chose to forgive, even if I couldn't forget. I chose to move forward, to build something new from the wreckage. I chose to surround myself with people who loved me, who reminded me that life could still be beautiful, even after everything that had happened. Emily and I stayed in touch, mostly for the kids. We were civil, even friendly at times. I didn't know if we'd ever be what we once were, but I knew that we could find a way to coexist, to move on. Maybe that was the best we could hope for. In the end, I realized that betrayal doesn't have to define you. It hurts, it scars, but it also teaches you, about yourself, about what matters, about the people who truly love you. It showed me that even when everything falls apart, there's always a way to rebuild. Life goes on. And so did I.